Hi, it's Professor McBride. Welcome back to Freshman Composition. Today, we're moving beyond the writing process and diving into the essential building blocks of an academic essay. We'll cover the 4 key elements you need to nail down before you start drafting. Let's look, though, at the specific parts of the academic essay. It's important to understand that essays generally have the same parts, but writers can organize and analyze information in different ways. Still, no matter if it's a cause and effect or comparison contrast, the academic essay will always have these standard parts: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. In the introduction, you will have the attention getter, the background information, and the thesis statement. In the body, you'll have the main point, explanation and examples, and the analysis. And in the conclusion, you'll have a paraphrased thesis, a synthesis of your primary points, and the last appeal to your reader, or what I call the so what factor. However, before you begin writing the essay, you must complete some preliminary work that sets up the entire paper. The 4 most crucial elements to identify before you begin drafting your essay are audience, purpose, thesis, and context. But remember, you don't have to see the whole staircase just to take the first step, as Martin Luther King said. Just take it a little bit at a time. Also remember, writing is messy. It's a work in process that might need tweaking. Think of this as a stage of writing that's a work in process. That means that you need to tweak or change things as you draft. You might be halfway through the draft and realize that your examples for the paper on fixing the problems in education are all directed to administrators when you thought you were writing to teachers. You might have to think of a different supporting point when one of the 3 in your thesis just doesn't lead to a lot of development. That's okay. If this happens, just be sure to go back and adjust everything in your essay that this affects to maintain consistency. Also, as we look at this list of 4, please realize that you can tackle them in any order. Sometimes audience will come to you first, at others it might be your purpose. I like the word equifinality that comes from small group communication. It just basically means that we all might take different paths to get to that end goal, but we get there eventually at the same time. So whatever works, works. So audience is your first point. Who are you writing to? This is your readers, your ideal reader. Who are they? What do they already know about your topic? What do they need to know? Understanding your audience helps you tailor your writing. You'll choose the right vocabulary, the right level of detail, and even the right tone. For example, if you're writing about climate change, your approach would be different for a group of elementary school kids than it would be for climate scientists, right? Now, obviously, in college, we're not writing to elementary school kids, but I think you get the point. As you're thinking about audience, consider these 4 areas. First of all, ask questions. Who are they? Then think about how do you target them? What can you say to appeal to them? What vocabulary will you need to use so that they will understand what you're talking about? And what is the essential info on the topic that they need to know? The second point is purpose. This is your reason for writing. There might be 4 purposes: to entertain, to create fiction, to inform and persuade, but in this class, we're only informing or persuading. Most of the essays actually you'll write in this class are persuasive, but even formative writing can have a subtle persuasive edge. Always be clear about what you want your writing to achieve. So remember, in informing, you're basically just providing information to your reader, but you're not asking them to do anything with it. In persuasion, you're giving them that information, but you're also then asking them to do something, to act, to rethink, to choose. Context, or the bigger picture, is all about the factors that shape your essay. It's the time period, the location, the social or political climate, anything that helps your readers understand why your topic is important right now. Think of it as the backdrop of your essay. It gives your writing depth and relevance. There are basically 5 different areas we usually think of when we think about context, and we're going to look at all 5 of them here just briefly. The first is time. It can be relevant and essential to your paper. First of all, no one should ever write from the beginning of time or since the first human appeared, because that's simply just illogical. We don't know what was going on at the beginning of time, and it's just too big a period to cover anyway. However, I can limit topics by choosing specific time contexts. For example, a discussion of civil liberties in America would be vastly different if I chose to look at them in the 90s as opposed to the post 9/11 era. So think about, when is the issue happening? When did it start? When did it end? All of these things may be really vital to your paper. Audience is another important context that can provide limiting areas. If I want to write about the Christian Bible as part of my reasoning for supporting the legislation, I have to think about the First Amendment, which says that people have the right to be free of religion. So I can't legally justify my paper for all people. However, if I limit my audience to Southern Baptists, and I specify that in my introduction, then I can reasonably expect that all Southern Baptists acknowledge the Bible as a guide to ethics from which most laws spring. So think about who is reading the essay, who is involved in the issue, who cares about it, who caused it, who is affected by it. These are all important contexts that an audience can help you discover. Purpose is also something that's important. We talked about it just a little bit while ago, right? So setting up an informative or persuasive essay requires different elements that are going to be things you need to set in place before you start writing. Think about why you're writing it. Why do you care? Is it informative or persuasive? And what you want to achieve. Setting is place. It might be essential. This can include a specific location like a fast food restaurant, or even more specific like Taco Bell. It could include a general area like all 2-year colleges, or even a geographical region like Seminole, Oklahoma. So think about, is a specific locale impacted by the issue? What environment does it or could it happen in? Does this affect a specific geographical location? These are all aspects of setting that might be important. Last is style. So in a college composition class, you have 2 general style contexts. The first is the level of language. All of your essays must follow standard academic English. You will not choose an audience that cannot read or understand on a level below the collegiate. The second is documentation and layout. We only use the Modern Language Association, or MLA style, 9th edition in this class. If your papers use another style to document or lay out your papers, you will face penalties. If it's a difference in documentation, then you might actually fail the paper if you don't use MLA. It is one of our course objectives. So when you're thinking about language, think about what level do you need to use. Even though everyone must be able to read at a collegiate level, there are still subtleties in differences if you're writing to a particular audience that is used to a formal type of language, or a group that's not. What will your reader understand? What words will trigger or inspire them? Those are also important aspects of language. And again, when it comes to layout, think about, did I use this? Is my paper in MLA? What kind of point of view am I allowed to use? The last thing is the thesis, which is the heart of your essay. It's the main idea you want to express. A strong thesis is clear, specific, and makes a claim that you can support with evidence. For example, think about gardening benefits people in many ways. It's just far too broad. It doesn't tell us what kind of gardening. It doesn't let us know what people, where, or the benefits. A much better one is community gardening programs, which are specific types of gardening, improve, there's our action verb, mental health, reduce food insecurity, and foster social connection. So actually we've got 3 verbs. We've got improve, reduce, and foster. Right? So we have those 3 things that are very, very specific. So our thesis must have a subject that's narrowed and focused. It must have some kind of action or attitude that we're taking on that subject, and it must have 3 primary supporting points, and all of these must logically connect to the same purpose and the same audience that we've already decided. Or we've got our thesis first, and then from that thesis we can figure out, well, who would be interested in this? Where would they be located, right? Remember, you don't have to do these steps in the same order. So, final thoughts. Understanding these 4 key elements, audience, purpose, thesis, and context, is the foundation for writing a successful essay. Once you have them nailed down, you're going to be ready to move on to outlining and drafting. In our next video, we're going to dive into drafting an essay from an introduction that hooks your readers right from the start to conclusion that seals the deal. See you then.